In a world where everyone is pulling at your mind, your time, your energy, and your emotions, the greatest freedom you will ever give yourself is the power to detach. Most people don't realize this, but you are controlled the most by the things you cling to, the people you fear losing, the outcomes you obsess over, the situations you replay in your head long after they've moved on without you. Attachment is not love. It is dependence, dressed as meaning. Machiavelli understood that the moment something becomes emotionally necessary to you, it becomes a handle by which you can be moved. Not by force, but by pressure. Not by attack, but by expectation. This is how power is stolen quietly. Every problem that consumes you does so because you have granted it mental residence. Every person who disturbs your peace does so because you have given them emotional access. The mind is a territory, and most men allow it to be occupied without resistance. Detachment is the act of reclaiming that territory. You stop fighting what you cannot command. You stop negotiating with reality. You step back, remove emotional weight, and watch clearly. When emotion leaves the equation, truth becomes visible. People expose themselves, situations reveal their limits, and you regain leverage without saying a word. This is not indifference. This is discipline. Masculine stoicism is not about feeling nothing. It is about refusing to be ruled by feeling. You decide what deserves your energy. Everything else is denied by silence. If this is resonating, comment, "Detachment is my freedom." Let that phrase mark the shift. This is Psygrythm. We don't chase control, we remove what controls us. Number 1. Withdrawal of attachment. Detachment begins when you understand a hard truth most people avoid. Your suffering is rarely caused by events themselves, but by your insistence that they should have unfolded differently. You replay conversations, you imagine alternate endings, you chase explanations that will never satisfy you. That mental friction is not accidental. It is the cost of attachment. And the cost is always paid in clarity. Machiavellian power does not come from controlling everything. It comes from refusing to be controlled by what cannot be controlled. The man who needs certainty becomes desperate. The man who needs validation becomes pliable. The man who needs outcomes becomes predictable. Predictability is the enemy of power. Detachment is not running away. It is stepping out of emotional contracts you never consciously signed. Contracts that say you must fix everyone, that you must be understood, that you must win every argument. These invisible obligations drain you because they are limitless. There is always another opinion, another demand, another crisis waiting to pull you back in. When you detach, you interrupt that loop. You stop feeding situations with urgency. You remove the emotional reward that keeps dysfunction alive. Most problems survive because someone keeps reacting to them. When reaction disappears, the problem either resolves itself or reveals that it was never yours to solve. This is where masculine stoicism becomes functional, not philosophical. You learn to separate observation from participation. You see what is happening without inserting yourself into it. You recognize manipulation without needing to expose it. You feel provocation without responding to it. This restraint is not passive, it is strategic. People will test this shift. When you withdraw attachment, those who benefited from your reactions will feel it immediately. They may escalate, they may guilt you, they may accuse you of changing. This is confirmation, not failure. The louder the resistance, the more necessary the detachment. Understand the psychology at work. When someone loses emotional access to you, they lose influence. Influence is what most people are really after, not connection. Detachment strips away false bonds and leaves only what is real. What remains after detachment is either respect or distance. Both outcomes serve you. You must also detach from outcomes. This is critical. Obsessing over results makes you rigid. Rigidity breaks under pressure. Power requires flexibility. You commit fully to your actions, but you release the need for specific rewards. This creates an internal advantage. You are effective without being desperate. The moment you stop needing things to go your way, your decision-making improves. You take cleaner risks. You speak less, but with more precision. You stop chasing approval and start choosing alignment. People sense this shift even if they can't explain it. Calm without need is intimidating. Detachment also sharpens your perception of time. You stop wasting it on arguments that go nowhere, relationships that extract without giving, and problems that recycle themselves endlessly. Time is not infinite. Machiavellian thinkers treat it as a weapon, not a resource to be spent emotionally. This does not mean isolation. It means selectivity. You choose where to invest attention, not where to react. You become difficult to provoke because provocation no longer offers a payoff. When nothing hooks you emotionally, manipulation loses its grip. Eventually, something subtle but irreversible happens. Your internal environment quiets, not because life is easier, but because you are no longer internally fighting what exists. That quiet is dangerous to those who rely on chaos to control you. Detachment is the midpoint between awareness and authority. It is where you stop being pulled and start standing still while the world moves around you. From here, your actions are deliberate, your silence is intentional, and your presence carries weight, because nothing owns you anymore. Number 2, the death of need. Detachment reaches its true depth when need dies. Not desire, not ambition, need. Most men never experience this state because they confuse wanting with requiring. They say they want respect, but they need approval. They say they want peace, but they need control over how others behave. That need is the chain, and chains don't have to be visible to be effective. Machiavelli understood that dependence is the oldest form of submission. The moment you require something from someone, emotionally, psychologically, or symbolically, you surrender leverage. Even if they appear weaker, even if they appear dependent on you. Need reverses power quietly. Look closely at your own reactions. Where do you feel anxiety when something is threatened? Where do you feel anger when something doesn't go your way? Where do you feel emptiness when someone pulls back? Those emotional spikes mark areas of attachment, and attachment marks areas where you can be moved. The dark psychology is simple. Whatever can disturb your inner state can be used against you. People don't need to defeat you. They only need to trigger you. Once triggered, you do the damage yourself. Overthinking, explaining, chasing, defending. All unnecessary, all costly. Detachment begins by stripping illusion from identity. You are not your role. You are not your relationship. You are not your reputation. These are external structures. Useful, yes, but replaceable. The man who fuses his identity to external structures becomes fragile. When those structures shake, he shakes with them. Masculine stoicism is not emotional numbness. It is emotional ownership. You feel, but you do not obey. You register emotion like data, not commands. Fear becomes information. Anger becomes a signal. Sadness becomes a temporary state, not a definition. Nothing is allowed to take the wheel. This is why detachment feels threatening to others. When you stop needing validation, flattery stops working. When you stop needing reassurance, manipulation fails. When you stop needing closure, control dissolves. You become harder to read, not because you hide, but because you are no longer leaking intention. Most people broadcast need constantly, in their tone, in their posture, in their urgency. They ask questions not to understand, but to secure certainty. They speak not to express truth, but to protect identity. This is why silence unsettles them. Silence reveals who is dependent on reaction. Detachment also requires letting go of imagined futures. The mind loves to project. It creates expectations, rehearses outcomes, builds emotional investments in scenarios that do not yet exist. When reality deviates, and it always does, frustration follows. The disciplined mind acts in the present and releases the future. Powerful men plan without attachment. They prepare without obsession. They move without emotional guarantees. This flexibility allows them to adapt when conditions change. The attached man breaks when the script fails. The detached man rewrites the script without hesitation. Another illusion must be destroyed, the belief that caring more gives you moral superiority. It does not. It gives you exposure. Caring without boundaries is self-betrayal. Machiavellian logic is not cruel. It is accurate. You cannot pour endlessly without being emptied, and empty men are easy to steer. Detachment teaches you to conserve energy. Not all battles deserve engagement. Not all people deserve explanation. Not all problems deserve attention. Selective investment is intelligence in action. You become ruthless not with others, but with your own focus. As need fades, something else grows. Internal gravity. You stop chasing, you stop convincing, you stop proving. Your presence becomes quieter, heavier. People feel it, but cannot name it. You are no longer reactive, so interactions slow down around you. That slowdown shifts power in your favor. This is why those who master detachment are often accused of being cold. In reality, they are simply not available for emotional extraction. They still act. They still choose. But their actions come from intention, not pressure. Detachment also dismantles fear of loss. Fear exists only where possession exists. If you believe something defines you, losing it terrifies you. When identity becomes internal, loss becomes transition. Pain may still occur, but panic disappears. And without panic, judgment remains intact. This state is not achieved overnight. It is trained. Every time you choose not to react, every time you let silence answer for you, every time you walk away without explanation, each decision weakens the old dependency loop. Eventually, you notice a shift. You are less exhausted, less mentally crowded, less reactive. You no longer feel pulled into every emotional current. Life still happens, but it happens around you, not inside you. This is the death of need, and in its place stands autonomy. Not arrogance, not isolation. Autonomy. From here, attachment becomes a choice, not a compulsion. Engagement becomes deliberate, and power, real power, emerges not from domination of others, but from independence from them. Number 3, silence, position, and invisibility. Detachment matures when silence becomes intentional, not the silence of fear, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of position. Most men speak to be seen, to be acknowledged, to prove presence. Power does the opposite. Power waits. It lets others reveal themselves while it remains still. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the refinement of action. When you speak less, every word gains weight. When you react less, every movement gains meaning. Machiavelli knew that visibility invites interference. The more you explain, the more angles you expose. The more you justify, the more authority you surrender. The detached man understands something fundamental. Information flows toward the quiet observer. People talk when they feel unchallenged. They overshare when they sense no resistance. Silence becomes a mirror. Others project into it, filling the gap with their intentions, fears, and agendas. You learn more by withholding than by demanding. This is where detachment turns into leverage. You stop signaling urgency. You stop advertising desire. You stop broadcasting emotion. And because nothing leaks, nothing can be exploited. The world begins to adjust around you, unsure of your position, uncertain of your next move. Invisibility is misunderstood. It is not weakness. It is insulation. When you are not constantly asserting yourself, you are not constantly being tested. When you are not always present, your presence becomes significant. Scarcity applies not just to resources, but to attention. Most conflicts escalate because someone insists on being heard. Detachment ends escalation by removing the fuel. You don't need to win arguments to win outcomes. You don't need to be right to be effective. You only need to remain unhooked long enough for the other side to exhaust itself. Dark psychology operates on emotional hooks. Provocation is bait. Guilt is bait. Praise is bait. Detachment teaches you to recognize the hook before it sets. You pause. You don't bite. You don't even acknowledge the attempt. And without engagement, the tactic collapses. Positioning is the next layer. You don't place yourself where you must react. You choose environments that amplify your strengths and minimize unnecessary friction. This is not avoidance. It is architecture. You design your life so fewer things demand emotional response. The attached man adapts to chaos. The detached man designs around it. Positioning also applies socially. You stop explaining your boundaries. You enforce them through absence. You don't argue about respect. You remove access. Over time, people recalibrate how they treat you, not because you demanded it, but because you made disrespect costly. There is a psychological shift that happens when you stop chasing acknowledgement. You stop needing to be liked. You stop needing to be understood. And paradoxically, your presence becomes more compelling. People sense that you are not available for extraction. This creates tension. Tension creates interest. Interest creates influence. Influence without effort is the result of detachment done correctly. Invisibility also protects your strategy. When people don't know your intentions, they can't interfere. When they don't know your next move, they can't block it. Transparency is only virtuous when power is equal. Otherwise, it is exposure. Machiavellian thinking does not moralize reality, it observes it, and reality rewards those who keep their inner world private. You don't owe anyone access to your thoughts, plans, or emotional landscape. Privacy is not deception, it is self-preservation. Detachment also trains patience. You learn to wait without anxiety, to let timing work for you instead of rushing outcomes. Most mistakes are made under emotional pressure, fear of loss, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. Detachment removes that pressure, allowing decisions to be made from clarity instead of urgency. Patience is not passivity, it is delayed aggression. You wait until conditions favor you, until information is complete, until leverage is clear. Then you move decisively, without hesitation or noise. The invisible man is underestimated. This is an advantage. When expectations are low, resistance is weak. When resistance is weak, movement is easy. Detachment allows you to operate beneath the emotional radar of others while building quietly. There is also a deeper internal benefit. Your nervous system stabilizes. You are no longer in constant alert mode. You are no longer scanning for threats that don't matter. This calm is not softness, it is readiness. When real challenges appear, you are not depleted by imaginary ones. Silence also exposes dependency in others. When you stop responding immediately, some people panic. They escalate, they seek reassurance, they push. This reveals who was feeding on your reactions. Detachment turns invisible dynamics visible. You begin to see patterns clearly. Who respects space? Who demands attention? Who collapses without validation? This information is invaluable. It allows you to choose alliances wisely and disengage cleanly. Detachment does not mean you disappear entirely. It means you appear on your terms. When you speak, it is intentional. When you engage, it is deliberate. When you withdraw, it is strategic. This balance, visibility and invisibility, creates authority. You are not always available, but you are always grounded. You are not loud, but you are felt. You are not reactive, but you are decisive. Over time, people stop trying to pull you into unnecessary conflict. They sense the cost. They sense the futility. Your calm becomes a boundary they don't cross. This is where detachment reshapes identity. You are no longer defined by roles, reactions, or relationships. You are defined by internal consistency, by self-command, by the ability to remain centered while others spin. Silence sharpens perception. Invisibility protects intention. Positioning creates advantage. Together, they form a state most men never reach: controlled presence. From here, detachment stops being a defensive act and becomes an offensive one, not against people, but against chaos itself. In the next section, this control will be directed outward, transforming detachment into quiet authority. Number 4, quiet authority. Authority does not announce itself. It settles into a room and changes the temperature. By the time most people realize it is there, it has already shaped the outcome. Detachment is what makes this possible. When you are no longer emotionally invested in being perceived a certain way, your presence becomes grounded, unmovable, and difficult to influence. Most men attempt to assert authority through force, through words, volume, explanations, or dominance displays. These tactics signal insecurity. They reveal a hunger to be recognized. Quiet authority works in reverse. It requires no validation because it is internally sourced. It does not seek approval because it does not fear disapproval. Detachment removes emotional desperation from your actions, and desperation is the single greatest threat to authority. The moment you need a reaction, you hand control to whoever withholds it. The moment you need agreement, you weaken your position. Quiet authority emerges when you act without requiring immediate confirmation. This is why emotionally detached individuals are often described as intense or hard to read. What people are really sensing is self-command. There is no emotional leakage, no urgency, no need to fill silence. The mind remains still, and stillness draws attention. In Machiavellian terms, authority comes from asymmetry. When others react and you do not, the balance shifts. When others explain and you remain concise, the hierarchy clarifies. When others chase resolution and you allow time to pass, leverage moves toward you. Time is an authority amplifier. Those who can wait without agitation gain advantage over those who rush to relieve discomfort. Detachment trains you to tolerate uncertainty, to sit in unresolved space without flinching. This tolerance becomes dominance in negotiations, conflicts, and relationships. Quiet authority also reshapes how you speak. You stop over-communicating. You stop defending your decisions. You stop narrating your reasoning. You state what is necessary and let reality handle the rest. People either adjust or remove themselves. Both outcomes strengthen your position. This does not make you cruel, it makes you clear. Clarity is often mistaken for coldness by those who benefited from your confusion. When you detach from the need to be liked, you gain the ability to be respected. Respect grows where boundaries are consistent and consequences are implied, not threatened. Dark psychology reveals an uncomfortable truth. People follow emotional stability more than moral arguments. They align with those who seem unshaken. Detachment creates that signal. You appear reliable not because you promise support, but because you are not easily destabilized. Quiet authority also protects you from emotional manipulation. Guilt loses its grip when you are not trying to be perceived as good. Praise loses its power when you are not trying to be admired. Fear loses its hold when you are not clinging to outcomes. Detachment neutralizes these levers. Another shift occurs internally. You stop identifying with every challenge. Not every disagreement is a threat. Not every obstacle requires confrontation. Not every loss is failure. Detachment gives you perspective, and perspective dissolves impulsive reactions. This allows you to choose your battles with precision. You engage only where influence is possible and cost is justified. You disengage where energy would be wasted. Over time, others learn that when you do engage, it matters. Your involvement signals importance. Quiet authority also redefines leadership. Leadership is not constant presence. It is decisive intervention. You don't micromanage. You don't hover. You let systems function until correction is required. This creates respect and self-sufficiency around you. People begin to self-regulate in your presence, not out of fear, but out of awareness. They sense that emotional theatrics will not move you, only clarity and substance will. This raises the quality of interaction automatically. There is also a personal benefit. Your internal world becomes less reactive and more intentional. You are not dragged into emotional spirals. You are not exhausted by unnecessary engagement. Your energy is conserved and directed. This conservation compounds. Over time, your calm becomes a reputation. Your restraint becomes expected. Others adjust their behavior preemptively. Influence grows without effort. Quiet authority is also adaptive. It does not rely on rigid rules. It responds to context. Detachment allows you to read situations without emotional distortion. You see patterns, not provocations. You respond strategically, not reflexively. This is the difference between appearing powerful and being powerful. Appearance requires constant maintenance. Being requires alignment. Detachment aligns your actions with your internal priorities rather than external pressure. The man with quiet authority does not chase control. He creates conditions where control is unnecessary. He does not demand respect. He becomes difficult to disrespect. He does not seek dominance. He becomes the reference point. Detachment also shields you from resentment. When expectations are released, disappointment fades. You stop feeling betrayed by others' behavior because you no longer base your stability on their choices. This emotional independence strengthens authority further. Eventually, you notice something subtle. Fewer people challenge you, not because you are aggressive, but because challenge feels pointless. There is nothing to push against, nothing to provoke, nothing to manipulate. Quiet authority is the natural outcome of disciplined detachment. It is not taught loudly. It is not displayed theatrically. It is sensed. Number 5. Pressure reveals command. Pressure is the great exposer. It strips away performance and reveals command. Anyone can appear detached when conditions are favorable. True detachment is tested when stakes rise, when emotions surge, when others attempt to force reaction. This is where most men fail, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack internal governance. Under pressure, the attached mind tightens, it rushes, it seeks certainty, it looks for allies, reassurance, and immediate relief. This urgency is visible, and visibility invites exploitation. Those who remain composed under pressure reverse the dynamic. They do not chase stability, they become it. Machiavellian power thrives in moments of tension. Conflict creates imbalance. Imbalance creates opportunity. The detached man does not rush to restore harmony. He allows discomfort to exist, because discomfort weakens those who cannot tolerate it. While others scramble to regain emotional footing, he observes. Detachment under pressure requires one skill above all others: emotional delay. You feel the surge, anger, fear, frustration, but you do not act on it immediately. You create space between impulse and decision. In that space, clarity forms. Most mistakes are made when that space collapses. When confronted, you do not explain. When accused, you do not defend reflexively. When provoked, you do not retaliate. This does not mean you accept injustice. It means you refuse to fight on terms designed to destabilize you. You choose timing. You choose terrain. Pressure tactics rely on speed. Guilt wants immediate response. Threats want immediate submission. Drama wants immediate engagement. Detachment denies immediacy. Time becomes your ally. Delay becomes resistance. Silence becomes strength. There is a psychological asymmetry here. The person applying pressure is often more invested in the outcome than the one receiving it. They need resolution. They need reaction. They need compliance. When you remain unmoved, the imbalance shifts. The one who needs less controls more. Under pressure, people reveal patterns. Some escalate, some retreat, some attempt to charm, some attempt to intimidate. Detachment allows you to read these patterns without being consumed by them. Information accumulates, leverage grows. This is where masculine stoicism shows its edge. You do not deny emotion, you master it. You allow the body to feel stress while the mind remains steady. Breath slows. Posture remains open. Voice remains measured. These physical cues signal command, not to